President Trump is raising new questions about a highly scrutinized meeting held at Trump Tower during the 2016 presidential election. Previously, the president and aides claimed the sit-down between his son, son-in-law, former campaign chairman, and a Russian attorney was about adoptions. But in a tweet over the weekend, the president wrote it was, quote, a meeting to get information on an opponent. He maintains he did not know about it at the time. Li Jiazhang has more from the White House.
Over time, facts develop.
President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, seemed to acknowledge the White House's changing defense of the 2016 Trump Tower meeting between Trump campaign officials and a Russian lawyer.
The question is, what law, statute, or rule or regulation has been violated? Nobody's pointed to one.
On Sunday, the president pushed the issue back into the spotlight. In a tweet, he defended his son Donald Trump Jr.'s involvement, saying this was a meeting to get information on an opponent. Totally legal and done all the time in politics, and it went nowhere. I did not know about it.
And then quickly went on to a story about Russian adoption and how we could possibly help.
But politics weren't mentioned in Donald Trump Jr.'s initial statement about the meeting in July 2017. Only later did he admit he took the meeting because he was promised dirt on Hillary Clinton.
In retrospect, I probably would have done things a little differently. Again, this is before the Russia mania. This is before they were building it up in the press. For me, this was opposition research.
In January, the Trump legal team revealed in a letter to the special counsel that it was President Trump himself who dictated the explanation about adoption, which contradicted previous White House statements about the president's involvement.
This was Donald Trump Jr. and his lawyers. The president was not involved in that.
He certainly didn't dictate, but, he, like I said, he weighed in, offered suggestion like any father would do.
Joining me now is Daniel Lippman. He's a reporter for Politico and the co-author of Politico Playbook. Daniel, thanks for joining me. Let's talk first about the president's changing story on the meeting at Trump Tower. What are the potential legal ramifications of doing so?
I think it just raises questions about his telling the truth and whether his constant tweets and previous public misstatements about this raise concern about obstruction or even perjury. And so if he was misleading the public about why they had this meeting in the first place, and remember they said it was about adoption, that is just a significant concern for the Trump team. And I think more about Donald Trump Jr. as well, whether he informed his father that he was having this meeting in the first place.
Daniel, why now? What is the timing here all about as you see it?
So I think the timing, you can always never tell what the president is thinking, but he and his legal team want to just get everything out there as possible to try to lay the groundwork for saying if there is any indictments of any other officials or parts of the family, that this is old news, that we've already reported on this, that there's, it was a normal course of the campaign. But the issue with that is that it just keeps this in the news and it reminds the public of this Mueller investigation and the fact that their stories have changed. That is a significant concern in terms of the Russia inquiry.
Well, and it's good to keep in mind that Paul Manafort is standing trial, the former campaign chair of the Trump campaign. Do you think that informs the timing on this at all?
Yeah, it might try to distract from that trial as it's happening. I think Trump is worried that this trial might eventually lead to Manafort potentially flipping. If he loses the first trial and then he has a second one in mid-September, then he might consider whether to cooperate with the special counsel because he wants to strike a better deal between those two trials. You really can't strike a deal after you lose both trials. Then you're just trying to prevent a horrible sentencing. And then he's also maybe waiting for a pardon, too, from the president.
Right. A lot of examination of what exactly Paul Manafort is doing and will do. But to your point earlier, Daniel, about the president trying to get everything out so that it seems like old hat. He, in fact, before has claimed, like meetings including the one at Trump Tower, happen all the time in politics. That old chestnut politics ain't beanbag. Does that hold up under scrutiny?
Well, Alex, not every presidential campaign or even it's hard to remember any other like presidential campaign meeting with a foreign country's lawyer and other people from abroad to try to get dirt on their opponent. That doesn't seem like normal beanbag. It seems like potential conspiracy. And so just imagine if Hillary Clinton did that, or George W. Bush, or Barack Obama. None of them would think to consider a meeting with a foreign official and the president's son and son-in-law and top campaign official. And so that seems more beyond the pale than most campaigns are willing to engage in.
Stretches the bounds of the definition of beanbag, perhaps. Daniel, I want to pivot to the rest of the country. Voters tomorrow are heading to the polls for primaries in Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and Washington. But you wrote this morning in that indispensable playbook newsletter, all eyes are on Ohio, where there's a special election tomorrow. Why is the 12th congressional district race why are all eyes on that race right now?
I think the reason that everyone's watching is that this is a pretty Republican district, R+7 in terms of the makeup of the electorate, and the fact that the Republican, who's not seen as a huge conservative, he's more of a moderate. He's trying to ally himself with both Trump and Kasich. The fact that he's only up by 1 point in a recent poll, that's just bad news for the Republicans going into November, because then that means that many other seats that they had previously thought were safe are up for grabs, and that Democrats are going to try hard to grab as many seats as they can because they see this as a golden year. You and I both know that Republicans have worried about losing the majority in the House since basically day one of the presidency, because of how the country has been so divided, and also Democrats are looking for blood. They want to have a part of the government that is a check on President Trump, and so they view that as reason enough to go to the polls. And you're going to have many young people who aren't as always interested in voting in the midterms. Mm-hmm. They will probably show up in November.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectations, a lot of interest about whether there is going to, in fact, be a Democratic surge in November, and perhaps Ohio will be a bellwether for this particular race. The president held a rally in Ohio on Saturday. Do those off-the-cuff rallies in close races like the one in Ohio, how much does that hinder this sort of establishment Republican strategy at this moment in time?
Yeah, most Republicans will not want Trump at their rallies before the midterm elections. And so this is more to get the base out. But then it also riles up Democrats, too, because if President Trump shows up to your district and you're a Democrat that had not really given much thought to this race, but you really don't like Trump, you might just show up to the polls, vote for the Democrat on the ballot, and you might not have done that if Trump had not gone. And so maybe the president doesn't recognize that, or he's willing to take some losses there because he knows that he can get out his base. Steve Bannon is talking about how the midterm elections, they're like Trump's first re-election to the president, because if he loses the midterms, then his second half of his first term is going to be kind of shot, because what can he do? The implications for the Trump presidency are huge. On the flip side, in that particular race, Republicans have been trying to tie the Democratic candidate, Danny O'Connor, to Democratic Party leader Nancy Pelosi. Is Nancy Pelosi still a successful straw man for the right? Or straw woman, as the case may be? Some people, but it seems like a little tired or old, that analogy. Like, they've been running that since 2006. I remember watching those campaign ads then, and it feels a little dated, but that's the best they can do. But you're going to see other Democratic candidates, they will distance themselves from Pelosi, and they say they're not going to vote for her in the leadership elections, and she's not going to be hitting the stump for every vulnerable Democrat or even every Democrat in contention, because she knows her place is to raise money and maybe get one last 2-year stint as Speaker if Democrats take control.
Yeah, a lot of questions about what Democratic leadership might look like if indeed the Democrats do end up taking back the lower chamber. Daniel Lippman, I'm sure there will be much more analysis from your end to come. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Alex.
And for more in-depth analysis on the day's news and politics, watch Red and Blue at its new time, 5 p.m. Eastern. That is every Monday through Thursday with Elaine Quijano, streaming right here on CBSN.